does that with that bump with John Wall. I mean, we may not be out of the realm of possibilities of seeing that next year. Right. I mean, if Melo can make it work, I mean, he's from the D.C. area. And, it may be something he wants to go back to. And I think at the very least, you have to consider Washington the number 2 team in the East at that point.
Now, what about Blake Griffin?
That's a whole other argument because now you're giving them a big man that they do need. You're giving him a more physical big man that, quite frankly, physical big men are lacking in the East.
Like I said, I like Marcin Gortat a lot. Like he's, every time I do fantasy basketball, I make sure to draft him.
Personal fan favorite of yours, I guess. But
him and Zydrunas Ilgauskas.
Him and Blake may not be a bad combo. No. Blake is very versatile of a player, but the thing that changes it is Blake adds physicality to that team. And in a conference that's much desperately lacking physicality out of big men for the most part, that could change the dynamic of who they are. They already have shooters. You give them someone who can dunk with authority and protect the rim and push people out. That may push them into the idea that we have to take them considerably, not just as the number 2, but maybe the number 1 in the East.
Okay. Now, going with Washington. Washington's a high-powered offense.
Mm-hmm.
They're considered the favorites to be the team that could beat the Cavaliers. Do you think their offense would be able to propel them past Cavalier defense? Would be the best term for it, I guess.
Maybe. It's going to come down, in my opinion, to will Washington be able to force Cleveland to play their game? Will they be able to keep the pedal on the floor, keep going, put pressure on LeBron to also play that way, and make sure that the pace is quick, and vice versa? How does Cleveland respond to it? Are they going to get up the floor quickly? Are they going to kick it out? Are they going to be making shot for shot? Will they be able to keep up pace, and who will tire out the quickest? If Washington can force Cleveland to play their game, I think they have a shot. But if they fall and they play Cleveland's game, they're going to have a tough time getting out of there.
Right. I'm confident in the Wizards to be able to beat Cleveland because I think Bradley Beal can outshoot anyone on the Cavaliers, especially from 3.
Well, yes, and that's going to be a lethal weapon for them too. The 3-point and I think dribble, drive, and penetration from Wall. If they can get that in a set offense but play their game and run, I don't know that the Cavs really necessarily want to run. They like to have their offense run out. LeBron wants to dictate the pace. He wants to make sure that everything's like that. But kind of like, and I don't like to make the comparison because he sucks, but Tom Brady, make him uncomfortable. If you make LeBron uncomfortable, you start to see the frustration come out. And that's where danger arises in Cleveland. So
then, should the next team that the Cavaliers play have their jerseys just say Posse on them?
It's not a terrible strategy. We can have everyone change their name legally to that.
Yeah. So, going back a little bit to earlier in the episode, should John Wall's name be considered potentially for MVP? He's definitely an MVP in the future.
You can put him in the category, and I think you could make the argument for him, but I just don't think, given the success of the season they had, the numbers he put up, I think he's a little bit far removed off the clouds. I wouldn't put him in my top 4.
And also, besides LeBron, he's got the best players around him.
Yeah, he does. He has a team that's very skilled and very often overlooked.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, Bradley Beal is an absolute stud. Otto Porter Jr.
Yeah, they have a lot of talent on that team, and no one should be sleeping on the Wizards, especially not this year and not in the years to come.
Okay. Now, the other side of that matchup, the Atlanta Hawks. What have they done to impress you? Because honestly, even though they won those 2 games, I really haven't seen much that has really, tickled my fancy. I mean, Dwight Howard, we know that he has the potential to be the next Shaquille O'Neal, to be the next Charles Barkley. But we know that he doesn't have the mental capacity to do that. He's just like, you're a Red Sox fan, Manny Ramirez. Guy is probably one of the most talented baseball players to ever come through the city of Boston. Yet, he doesn't always want to play. And it's a problem because he sometimes didn't want to play when he was out in the outfield.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a fair comparison. They're very similar in the fact of immense amount of talent, but not. It doesn't seem like the drive to want to always put forth the best effort. It's hard for me to find anything that I can really think of, honestly, that makes me impressed with Atlanta. I think Atlanta's just happy to be where they are right now. I don't think they were expecting to have this season. I think they got Dwight, and then, with a lot of people leaving the last couple of years with Aldridge and Teague, they need to do a little bit more to get pieces around them, and I think they're even a little bit surprised to be in the position that they're in. It certainly surprised me. I didn't see it, so I'm not really too impressed by anything that I'm seeing from Atlanta, other than the fact that this is a closer series than I thought it would be, but I think that Atlanta is happy to be where they are. I think this is the best you could have hoped for in this season, and take it as that, because even if you were to by some miracle get out of this round, there's no way they get out of the next.
The Wizards take it back to DC for the next game. Who do you think wins the series?
I think the Wizards win the series.
I do too. So far it's been pretty boring. We've both picked the same team to win the series so far. So that leaves us, I believe, with one Eastern Conference.
Bulls Celtics, I believe.
Yeah, Bulls Celtics. So this is a fun one to watch. Unfortunately, it had to start terribly tragic way. Isaiah Thomas's sister died in a car accident. But the day after, he played unbelievably out of his mind to keep the Celtics even close in that game. The Bulls took the first two games. The Celtics took the next two, and the Celtics bring it back to Boston. Now, Isaiah Thomas is the guy in Boston. Should his name be considered for the MVP?
I think there's an argument that's to be made for it, considering his importance to the team that he has. But again, I think we're really just starting to see the cusp of the emergence of Isaiah Thomas. I think he has a ways to go. He's certainly been impressive all season.
Don't you want to see him on the Knicks?
I would love to see him on the Knicks. But I don't know that I can necessarily put him in the conversation of MVP just quite yet. I think I want to see more out of him consistently throughout seasons rather than just this season. But I can see the argument being made given how important he is to that Celtics team.
I think he's just as important to the Celtics team as Russell Westbrook is to the Thunder.
I mean, I can see the parallel you draw there. I mean, Russell Westbrook's just more impressive with what he can do and the numbers he's putting up, but Isaiah Thomas is going to be that point. They're almost the Oklahoma Thunder of the East, because Boston has to recognize that this team moving forward is Isaiah Thomas, and it is building around him.
Right. I mean, they have Crowder, Green, Horford, which is really good veteran leadership, and Avery Bradley, Kelly Olynyk, Marcus Smart. They've got a lot of good players. But looking at that roster without Isaiah Thomas, I can't say that I'm confident they'd be a playoff team.
No, and the other thing is I think are also seeing the emergence of Isaiah Thomas accepting the role as being a general. So I like the direction Boston's heading and where they're and how they've evaluated this season. I also think that their season is a lot more successful than they thought it was going to be, because I don't think Boston thought that this was necessarily going to be this good of a year, but I think they're pleasantly happy in the direction it's going and know where to build off of.
Right. And so the Celtics, the 1 seed, which is a surprise to many. Not if you've been watching the Celtics all season. They have been a really good team, and it all does go through Isaiah Thomas. On the other hand, the Bulls were lucky to make the playoffs. They were in a 3-team race for 2 spots. It happened to be the Pacers and them, and the Heat were on the outside looking in. So this series has anything really stood out to you as the Bulls were undervalued or, missed something earlier in the season if they had later in the season, a switch or anything like that, that shows that the Bulls should have been a higher seed than they were? Because if so, I haven't seen it.
No, I think even watching this series, you get the feeling that you felt if you've watched any of the Bulls this season that it's almost a schizophrenic team. Or a bipolar team because they're either all together or they're all over the place. It's hard to really figure out exactly who they are and who's showing up. They're either going to be a team that can compete or they're a team that falls flat on their face. And that lack of consistency makes me believe that, I'll divulge my pick here. I don't think with the 3 games left, even if Rondo does come back in Game 6 and 7, I don't know that they have a chance to really hold on here because they're so up and down with them. And it's such a roller coaster, and that to me has just been the stories of the Bulls all year.
Yeah, Jimmy Butler, Robin Lopez, they're good players. Dwayne Wade doesn't have what he used to. He can't even dunk anymore.
Yeah, he doesn't have much left in the tank. I think, I don't know, me personally, I could understand maybe he wanted to be a Bull just for the sake of being a Bull.
He's from Chicago.
And I get that, so I could see why you'd want to do that. That being said, I still think the Bulls should know the direction they need to go. It's just not going to be as easy right now, but they should focus around Jimmy Butler. He's a good enough player. It's just they don't have the talent or the firepower to really be in this. And even when they are clicking, they're not clicking so well, and there's no consistency. You don't know that you're going to get that night in and night out.
You're right, and I completely agree. I think the first 2 games were an aberration. I don't think that's who the Bulls were. Even if Rondo didn't get hurt, I think the Celtics would have turned it on. Mm-hmm. And I think that they would have, with or without Rondo, with or without his injury, I think the Bulls take it in the next 2 games. I'm sorry, the Celtics take it in the next 2 games.
I think it's a possibility. This game could go to 7 if they do get Rondo back. I wouldn't be surprised for it to go to 7 just because it is hard to close out on the road, and they would have to be in Chicago. But it wouldn't surprise me if the talent on the Celtics does overmatch slightly the talent that's available to the Bulls right now.
Yeah,
and they're just not a cohesive unit, the Bulls.
I think a lot of people like the Bulls. A lot of people think that the Bulls, talent-wise, are better than the Celtics. I think that's hogwash.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think if you look at the depth of the roster, you can say that the Bulls are more talented than the Celtics are. The Celtics have way more options, and it runs a lot deeper.
Yeah, and this might just be, again, not necessarily personal bias, because I hate Boston. I hate everything Boston sports, except for Boston College. But I think Avery Bradley is great. I really like him.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of Bradley.
So that's the Eastern Conference. So our 4 picks have been exactly the same. Well, our 3 picks, because
Cleveland's going in. We don't get to pick that.
Right.
Yep, so we had Toronto. We had the Celtics, and finally the Wizards going forward.
Correct. All right, so now we're going to move into the Western Conference. Again, 1 series is already done. Surprise, not surprise, it's the Golden State Warriors sweeping the Portland Trailblazers. Portland Trailblazers, a decent team, have a great player in Damian Lillard, but Lillard's not enough to propel them even to 1 win, I guess.
That's true. But that being said, I think the